Hey everyone, Sif here, and I've been wanting to do some replay analysis for a while now, and I finally got my microphone and my camera set up, so I figured that this is the perfect time to start. Today we're gonna be looking at a game between myself and my friend Starflash, and it's on the map Vainglory. Now this map is probably most well known as the map where Voice of Akasha was defeated by Rip a little over a year ago now. And up until that point, Voice of Akasha was considered the best player on the site. Probably still is by most people. But I think that now Rip may also be considered the best player on the site by a lot of people. And he also has the highest rating of all time as of this recording. So, pretty well known map. It's mixed base. We've got 4 bases, 1 airport, and 2 towers per side. And the income is 29K, which is kind of a lot for standard. That's like approaching high funds levels of income. But it's 4 bases, so the income to base ratio is maybe a little bit lower than what you would see in high funds typically. So I would say that the basic strategy for a mixed base map in general is that you kind of want to bring your bases together, bring the units from them together, and then try and knock out one of your opponent's bases. Typically on this map, it's this one in the middle that gets targeted. This is kind of surrounded, as you can see, by production facilities. Also, depending on how the game goes and how things develop in the middle, the headquarters can be somewhat vulnerable. And also, mixed base being mixed base, the game can develop in a lot of different ways. So you can have, instead of this base being the target, you could have like this base being the target. Let's see here. What else? Regarding the matchup, I'm playing Sammy, and Starflash is playing Kindle. So these are comfort picks for us, I would say. They're both pretty familiar with these characters. We've got a lot of games on them. We kind of know how they work inside and out. So it should be good. Also, I think this is just an interesting matchup in general because you have both Sammy and Kindle have, I would say, good day-to-day CO power and super CO power, which means that there's just like a lot of options for both players. And I think the game can unfold in a lot of different ways because of that. They also just interact in interesting ways. So you have, for instance, Urban Blight is typically Kindle's CO power. Urban Blight is generally considered very effective in mixed base because you have the ability to interrupt captures with it. However, Sammy, with her capture bonus, can continue capturing through Urban Blight with 7 HP and finish the capture in 2 turns. However, while with one attack you generally cannot interrupt a Sammy capture, after an Urban Blight you can do it with one attack. So also, Sammy obviously has very powerful infantry. Kindle also has strong infantry when they're sitting on a city. Sammy has a quite strong CO power in double time, which lets her threaten her opponent's infantry if they are too close and they're not respecting it. Kindle has an excellent CO power, Urban Blight. Not only does it allow her to interrupt caps, but it just allows her to do a ton of damage from urban terrain. Sammy has an excellent Super CO power in Victory March, which allows her to capture properties in one turn. Pretty strong. And it also gives all of her foot soldiers +2 movement. Very useful on a map like this with lots of heavy terrain in conjunction with mechs. But we'll see how that develops later on. And then Kindle obviously has a good Super CO power because she has High Society, which grants increasing firepower based on the number of properties you control. And there's quite a few properties on this map. So I would say, yeah, both characters have quite a few strengths that they can leverage in this matchup. Also, I think that Ming's recently recorded a video also featuring Starflash on Kindle on this map against a different Sammy, piloted by a player named Panas. And I think that one's also an interesting match to look at because I think it's a very interesting matchup. You typically don't see Sammy versus Kindle because on most maps, Sammy is tier 2. Kindle is recently considered tier 2. So yeah, let's take a look at the game without further ado. So we're just going through the first couple turns here. Everything's pretty normal. We're just capturing our bases. And let's see here. So Starflash is capturing this direction. He's getting this city. I'm running up here first because I see this nice chain of 3 cities. Slight difference in our capture phase. You'll see that this 2-base area is where we're going to be strongest, respectively. Followed by probably up here with this airport. This is definitely the weakest base. So Starflash is opening a tank. Makes a lot of sense. It's safe. It's effective. It's a Kindle tank on a city. Very difficult for Sammy to dislodge with her own tanks until she's capturing both her towers. And even then, with 2 towers, it's not guaranteed to clear a tank off a city using 2 tank first strikes, which is kind of brutal. Kindle tanks are really good. So I'm going to need mechs to deal with that or something else. Also, the tank from the 2-base, if it goes into the center, it has a lot of options. It can support this base, where you're typically weaker. It can threaten down here. It can threaten my weak base. Or it can go all the way up here and support whatever this base is doing along the top edge of the map. So that's probably the natural place to build a tank. So I'm going to open with a battlecopter here for a couple different reasons. First of all, it uses all my money perfectly. Second of all, I really like early copters and just using the airport in general as Sammy because first of all, the B-copter enables you to fight Kindle tanks or the tanks of other COs, which would typically be stronger than your own. You've got like that little bit of the triangle bonus working in your favor in that case. Sammy is the foot soldier CO, But really, you want a balanced composition because you want to be using your, you want to be leveraging those unit triangles as much as possible to overcome the fact that your vehicles have lower base attack. So, second of all, the B-copter is going to the second reason why I like airports in general as SAMI is that building from them, it allows you to go +1 unit count, and it also allows you to build additional infantry from your bases. And the earlier you're building your infantry as SAMI, the better, because they move very slowly, and you can both capture more properties and threaten your opponent's captures more easily the more you have deployed as soon as possible. And just having like a higher infantry count overall is very important, because the way that SAMI loses is that she runs out of infantry to leverage with her powers. And then the final reason why I like the B-copter on this map to start is it, similar to the tank, once it heads towards the center, it has a lot of options. It can pressure this base. It can potentially fly up in this direction. Although I think that can be cut off with anti-airs. But also, if you look down here along this bottom edge, there is a lot of very heavy terrain here that is blocking off these cities. And it's pretty natural that you would want to send your infantry across this river and mountain to contest these cities. But the B-copter can do a lot of damage in this little nook here. So we'll see how that works out. You can see Starflash is going for this area I was just referring to. Makes a lot of sense. He opened an anti-air to counter my battlecopter. Also makes a lot of sense. And so, seeing this anti-air, I decide I'm going to go in this direction, like I was talking about, to threaten this infantry, which the anti-air is going to have a lot of trouble reaching because I can just stream tanks in this direction. And if he wants to build an anti-air over here, which eventually he's going to be forced to, it has to drive all the way around to get over here, which takes like 4 turns to reach this tile. And like I said, there's going to be tanks over here. So that's not really feasible. Basically, the battlecopter allows you to control these 2 cities, which is pretty important. So, Starflash moving out into the center with his vehicles, threatening a lot of my units. Makes sense. I'm getting my captures, but I'm not going to be able to defend this infantry or this infantry. So he's going to be able to get a free attack here. Unfortunate, but it's kind of forced. So I'm going to start building some mechs up here. I see that there's a very straightforward approach here using mechs to just reach the city in 2 turns, which means that, and that's very difficult for Starflash to deal with because their airport is way over here. There are 2 bases over here. They have 1 base to manage this city. And if they have to worry about this front as well, and this corner as well, then it's going to be quite difficult for him to contest this if I'm just like streaming mechs across these mountains. And then also I'm thinking that once my powers are online, if I have a sufficient amount of mechs over here, then I can just use them to threaten this base. Typically, these mountains you would think are going to help you defend because you can put your own infantry or mechs on them. But I think that in practice on this map, there's not really a lot of time to set that up. If you build a mech, it's not going to cover as much area as a tank would. It's also not going to capture properties as efficiently as infantry would. So there's like a very limited window to build mechs. So effectively, these mountains end up working against you most of the time, I'd say. And my thinking is that if I have enough mechs, then I can use these mountains to take over this base, basically. Because Sammy mechs and mountains are really, really strong. And they move very quickly through them. So let's see here. Like I said before, I have some infantry here that are vulnerable. I built this tank here to cover this, but Starflash is going to do something pretty clever here and interrupt his own capture in order to finish off my infantry. Now, as I said before, the way that Sammy loses is by running out of foot soldiers. And so any opportunity that Starflash has to kill my infantry off is probably an opportunity worth taking. And as we see, he's going to do the exact same thing up here. So he's delaying his own captures in order to get these early kills. Makes a lot of sense. This infantry, pretty aggressive. I'm not sure about how this is supposed to work out here. Maybe the safer move would just be to move back across the river, but we'll see. We've got our anti-air over here. B-Copter's kind of penned in now, but it's got a job to do, so that's fine for the time being. I'm going to interrupt my own capture to interrupt his. Fortunately, Sammy does a lot of damage. I've got 2 towers now, which means that I can knock him down to 4, which delays this for 2 turns instead of 1 turn. Another thing about Sammy is the way you want to think about your game plan is that in the early game, if you can keep income low on both sides, that is going to be to your advantage, because the less money that either player has for vehicles, that means that you're both going to be producing more infantry. And the more infantry on the map, the better positioned Sammy is in general, because she wants to take as many infantry fights as possible, especially when her powers come online. So I'm going to pick off this infantry here, threaten this city and this city with my captures. B-Copter's paying off kind of the way I wanted. I forced the anti-air. It hasn't done anything yet. And I'm already taking over this little river area. So at this point, this game is starting to develop. You can kind of see what I'm going for here. I'm going for this mech flood across this heavy terrain. Taking this city, it's going to be very difficult for him to contest because I can just stream mechs very quickly. And then after I take this city, they can move in this direction or this direction. And if they move in this direction, I can create a lot of pressure on this base very quickly. But there is there is something that I missed here. And it's kind of important. So let's see what that is. Starflash moving up from this situation here makes sense because this is like in my base range basically. And also both these infantry are damaged now. It's going to be kind of tough for him to finish either of these captures. But that's okay because he has other plans. So he had an infantry right here, which was in range of my headquarters. And actually at the time I sent him a message and I was like, on the previous turn I looked at every tile except my headquarters, which I think is true. I was playing pretty carefully because I know Starflash is really good. And, but somehow I was not thinking about this headquarters capture, even though it makes a lot of sense for him to go for it. And, but luckily I have 1 infantry in range. Very fortunate that I have 1 infantry in range, because otherwise I would be toast. And you don't want to be losing your headquarters as Sammy on day 8 to a Kindle, because that's kind of embarrassing. Typically, it's supposed to go the other way. So he strikes my infantry, and now I repair up to 6. I make the obvious move. I have to interrupt this capture or I just lose. It's forced. My infantry dies because Kindle infantry on my headquarters has a lot of defense. I think this roll is like 28 to 32 or something. So if he had 8 HP instead of 7, I could have been in a lot of trouble, potentially. So at this stage, I'm under a lot of pressure because I don't have very many units in range of this tile. And if you notice, this infantry, to be in range of interrupting this capture next turn, these guys are not actually in range. He must be standing on this city, which is the only tile from which I can strike his Starflash's tank. So that's very awkward for me. I have to choose between putting the infantry in range of the headquarters or, attacking the tank that just moved in range of my mech, which I would love to do. So I think I spent quite a while on this turn. And I'm in a very awkward position here because he has lots of tanks, lots of vehicles surrounding this capture to defend it. I'm kind of out of range, and I determined that I have to get double time next turn to survive. And after some time in the move planner, I reached the conclusion that I would have to take some very aggressive positioning in order to not only guarantee that I can get double time next turn, because I'm pretty far away from it, but also to make sure that he can't do some combination of blocking around this tile and deleting his units. Because I think that there are different ways that he can play this, where if he does both of those things, it's very difficult for me to interrupt him. Because if he deletes his units, then I can't generate enough charge to get my power. And if he blocks the correct tiles, then I just can't get in range at all. So, thinking about this for a while, I decide that I have to put my units in a position to interrupt this. It gives me the best possible chance of interrupting, which means taking some very awkward engagements. I strike this tank so that I don't have to deal with another full health tank in the way. I go after this tank with the mech, because if I'm going to get my power next turn, then it doesn't matter that this guy is 3 spaces away. He can be 4 spaces away. This tank is like just slightly too far away to sit on this city, which is awkward. And if I go up in this direction, he can actually move this infantry down and block this tile, which means that also this tank is covering these 2 tiles. So I really have very few options to attack. I have to come at it from like these directions, basically. I'm going to interrupt this capture, not so much to interrupt it, but more so because I don't want him to have a full HP infantry to block with next turn. I move these guys down in this direction because I want to be able to wrap around these forests and potentially threaten blockers on these shoals. Because like I said, I can't really go up in this direction because this mountain is in here, and I can't clear this tank. I don't have enough firepower. So let's see how this goes. I have to give up my my designs on the city here and move everything in the direction of the headquarters so I don't just lose outright. Okay. So this position is very precarious for me. I wasn't actually certain that I had thwarted the HQ cap. It may have been possible for him to get it anyway, although I think it's pretty unlikely because I've moved enough stuff in this direction that if he wants to prevent me from just like rolling up with these tanks, then he has to fight. And if he fights, then I'll have enough for my power, in which case these mechs and this infantry and this infantry and this infantry are all in range. So I feel like I'm probably safe from the HQ threat at this stage. But I have another problem now. And the problem is that my entire army is exposed. And not only that, he has excellent tiles to attack me from because he's Kindle. So rather than continue the headquarters threat, he's going to just go after my army, which makes a lot of sense. And he can build Urban Blight halfway through his turn to get even more damage in. So this is becoming a very difficult position for me. And at this point, I'm kind of desperate, actually. You can see I'm down 30k army value at the start of my turn. I have a lot of wounded units that are not going to be very useful for fighting. He's got his power active, and he's camping on really good terrain. And so I'm looking at this turn and I'm like, okay, I can interrupt this. I can finish this capture here. I can go for this. I can finish this capture. I can end up like plus 1k at the end of this turn. And maybe I can like scrape by with a small income advantage and just like stay alive. That's what I'm thinking. So I start my turn. I finish this capture here. I make I clear off this infantry. I make my first attack from the plains instead of the shoal. I don't want to be in range of this tank. By attacking from the forest, trying to take less damage. Interrupt this capture here. At this point, a new idea pops into my head. I think that I'm going to open up my calculator and I'm going to do a little bit of quick math. And after I do my math, I double check my calculator and I do the calculations again to make sure that I reached the correct conclusion. And it looks really close. And let's see if you can figure out what my new plan is based on my next moves. I think it might be kind of obvious. So I'm going to take every available attack, sacrificing my units in the process. And you can see my meter is slowly creeping up. Fortunately, this is Kindle with Urban Blight and 2 towers here. So it's very easy for me to sacrifice my units into her units. So here I'm a little bit concerned because when I was calculating, I thought that this was going to be like generating a little bit more charge. I didn't take into account the fact that this tank was chipped before I attacked it. But fortunately, I have exactly 1 more attack to make. And I am 450 charge shy of Victory March. So I make my final attack. I pop Victory March. And I capture his headquarters. And I win the game. So this is a pretty silly game, honestly. I think that by all accounts, I was more or less dead to rights here. I was very fortunate. Starflash played this really well. But sometimes the key to victory is to just lose everything, because that's how you get Victory March on day 9. But yeah, I think that, I don't know if this is the most informative game. I don't know how easy this is to replicate. It's probably not very easy to replicate. But I thought it was very funny. And I think Starflash was surprised. We were both very surprised. I don't think we expected it to go this way. I plan to position in order to guarantee myself CO power ended up working even better than I expected, because I lost even more units than I thought I would. And I ended up guaranteeing myself super CO power. So yeah, I think that about ends it. It's kind of a short video, but like I said, this is my first one, so I kind of wanted, and this game is sticking out in my memory of my recent games, so I wanted to cover it. And I think that my next video will probably be a more conventional game, maybe a little bit longer, and maybe a little more informative, maybe a little more useful for other games that you may have going forward. But yep, this was a fun one, and I think I will stop there. So thanks for watching, and I hope to be back soon.